Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded. This video will be on Baetyl stones, which will relate to a recent series looking at Omphalos or navel stones, and those links will be in the description as well as some others. Now, so we have our map here. Now, what we have is these referred to as Omphalos stones. They're from the Vinca Varna culture, which is very ancient, 4,500 BC, one burial hoard that was found there. And the connections, similarities to the earliest Benben stones of Egypt. And also Bennu, the phoenix, and we'll notice the bird as well, which is a theme that I went through in the Omphalos series. But what's also interesting, links in the description, is again the Varna Necropolis, and that the certain finds, the geometry connects very nicely to Egyptian pyramids, but also to the Egyptian unit of measurement, the Egyptian royal cubit, pi over 6 meters as well. Nice geometry. That link to that video will be in the description. But these Vinca Varna Omphalos are very similar, at least in appearance, because there's so little recorded known about Vinca Varna. We have to rely purely on the artifacts, but the similarities between important, well-known Omphalos stones of the Greek times, so the famous Temple of Apollo at Delphi in Athens, or in Delos, the island of Delos. Now, the exact dates of Delphi, for instance, not known, but let's just put it in that Hellenistic early portion, of Greek era, so 700 to 400 BC, and very, very close. For instance, the Golden Fleece story and the connection would lead to the Vinca Varna part of the world, but that's something else. So these Greek Omphalos stones, they marked the navel or the center of the world, points of creation, such as the legend of Zeus marking Delphi as the center of the world with the Omphalos stone from the time of the war with the Titans. And Delos is of special interest because it is also an important creation point. Now, Artemis and Apollo were forbidden to be born on the land or the sea, so the floating island of Delos was neither land nor sea, but that's where the moon goddess Artemis or Diana, or Apollo, the sun god, were said to have been born. Very important sites, each one of these in the ancient world. So we have these Omphalos stones. Now you'll also find them, for instance, in the famous treasury building of Petra. Now in there, so there we have nearby we have this niche with a very similar to your typical Omphalos conical stone. But there's also another stone which has the a bit worn and weathered, but you can still get the idea of the snake wrapped around the Omphalos or the navel stone. So there's a comparison: Delphi and Petra in Jordan, and Petra and the Delos version. Now, because of course Petra, the treasury building, it's clearly, it's very Greco-Roman entirely in design and decoration. But also from that part, now Petra of course is a very ancient site, but at least those parts are. Now what's interesting is that from this part of the world around Petra, we have this this Roman coin here showing this temple. Now that's from Emesa, now Homs in Syria, and that is a Baetylus. And this is the feature. What is a Baetylus stone? So this stone was taken to Rome, and it was set up. So Omphalos, we have the Millennium Golden Milestone, the center of the Roman world, and the earlier Umbilicus. Now both of them, they're less than a stone's throw from one another, but they marked the center of the Roman world. All roads were measured from there. But okay, that's an alignment which would lead to goes through Delphi and to the Omphalos in Athens. But in this region here, what we also have, that's so these were naval centers of the world, Omphalos stones. The Elagabalium temple set up. Now there's some contention. So basically this Baetylus here was brought from Syria, and there is some discussion as to whether the Syrian sun god was also imported, and whether it replaced Sol Invictus, that's argued over, but it's still the connection to the sun god and to this important places, and this Baetylus, which was set up an important stone there. Now, what is a Baetylus? Also known as a Baetyl or a Betyl or a Bethel, from the Semitic word Bet-El, house of God. They are sacred stones that had an essence of life, that they could, just like the Omphalos in Delphi being a center of creation, or the Benben stone being a center of creation, these stones had life-giving properties connected with procreation and such things. What's interesting that this Baetylus brought from Syria to Rome is described as a black stone, and likely it was a meteorite, especially because meteorites were highly valued, black stones, because of the iron content. So, for instance, here you see a black stone or a meteorite, high iron content. So before the Iron Age, iron artifacts were widespread, but the Iron Age really describes a period where iron production went into an industrial scale. Iron was in use widely across, so ancient Egypt, 3300 BC roughly, what we have is this iron bead, and it was a meteorite iron. And lots of examples of meteorite iron across the world. So this is about 1000 AD, but this is from a much older meteorite found in Tibet, and it's a Buddhist, and it was carved from the eye. So meteorite iron was highly, actually, in some cases valued more, but still is now. But what's also okay? But now the Baetyl stone was imported to Rome, and in Greco-Roman period. But we also have Phanes or Mithras, being these very gods with very Eastern aspects, being imported into the Greco-Roman world. Now, so again, was this Baetyl tradition also imported through there, or did it come from the Vinca, Varna, or from Egypt? So what we have, Greco, especially the Romans, were the heirs of several older streams of knowledge. Now, the twin rivers in Egypt is well known, but the influence of older cultures such as Archaim up in modern Ukraine, or the Celt culture just to the north there, or farther afield, such as let's call it Druids and those stones, that's not so well known because it's not documented. So the amount of influence, it's hard to say, if any at all. But we do see these, for instance, Phanes and Mithras, and what's important about them, how they connect to Baetyl stones, is that, well, first, Mithras was born from a rock, from a stone. It's interesting that, so again, you can see Mithras being born from a stone. Notice the zodiac, another depiction of Mithras born from a stone or an egg, with wrapped by the snake. Now, Sun Wukong, Journey to the West, this classic of ancient Chinese literature. Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, was born from an egg, which was born from a fertile stone, which is very similar in theme, at least, to Baetyl stones. Phanes, again, now this will be a later depiction, but still we see the zodiac around the outside, and the very Mithraic in a form, but again born from a stone or from the cosmic egg, and entwined in a serpent. And so this is a Roman coin, but minted in current day Syria or Lebanon. But again we see this Orphic egg, this cosmic egg, born from a stone. Very Baetylish. Now, Mithras, again, egg and zodiac, and also the egg and the snake, very similar to this older Orphic religion, Phanes. But Baetyl stones, as I mentioned, Bethel is this. Now, for instance, in the Bible, Jacob's Pillowstone and the story of Jacob's ladder, that was a Baetyl. Now, after he had the dream, it was anointed with oil. Very similar to the way that the Omphalos at Delphi was anointed with oil and then covered with a woolen cover as well, which is a connection. But the Pillowstone of Jacob's ladder, for instance, in Freemasonry and Theosophy. Now, Nicholas Roerich and this peculiar stone that he come into ownership of, links to places such as Rosslyn Chapel. But the Roerich Pact this was an international pact based on Nicholas Roerich, and links in the description to a couple videos where I go into that, because Ghostbusters is actually based on Nicholas Roerich, and the architecture of the buildings connected therein, and also cornerstones and the cornerstones ceremony, especially at the Roerich building, and who was connected to it. Those links will be in the description. But speaking of Baetyl stones, these sacred stones at the centres of the world, very similar to an Omphalos, we have this black stone, this sacred stone at the Kaaba. Now, some say that was a meteorite. Some descriptions describe it as being able to float in water, so more like pumice stone. Not exactly sure, but certainly it's this black stone, very much in that older traditions. And Muhammad Ali, again, the black stone there is exactly what it's made out of, but what we do have again is from this part of the world that particular reverence of sacred stones connected to God, gifts from God. So just like the meteorite iron was considered a gift from God because it got this precious metal, which was so much better than bronze or copper to make knives and weaponry and tools as well. In Carthage, the part of where Tyre and Baalbek was Phoenician, but also Carthage, for instance, Hannibal, the rivals of early Rome. And we see very similar Baetyl stones now, especially if you compare them to. So this is a Roman coin showing the pyramidal Baetyl, but notice also the caduceus there as well. And that's an interesting point because some Baetyls were canonical, but then they were also pyramidal, and notice the symbols there. But what's interesting particularly about that is that, for instance, the conical Baetyl stones, such as at sun temples, were connected with Apollo, the sun god, as where the Romans separated these triangular pyramidal Baetyl stones and associated more with the sky god Zeus. And you have the earlier depictions of the Benben stones being canonical, and then you have either as an obelisk or as a pyramid cap, we have Benben stones being pyramidal, which might be of interest. It's hard to lock that down. But so links will be in the description to related videos on the Omphalos, as well as some of those, for instance, on the Nicholas Roerich stone, the Roerich Pact, and other ones I've mentioned earlier. Anyway, more to come still on this because it's unexpected. It's sort of led into many other areas, alignments, centres of the world, the Omphalos stone, distances and arrangements. It's to both the ancient and the modern world, for instance, London and New York. I'll put those links in the description as well. For instance, the Heliopolis obelisks, Cleopatra's Needles in New York and London, the connections to Mithras and others that in plain sight. But with that, hope you enjoyed and have a good one.